The Finance Subcommittee of the City Council is comprised of 5 council members and considers any or all questions appropriate for the purpose of considering the budget, including the creation of new positions to the payroll, changes to the employee classification plan, or any matters pertaining to increasing the City of Framingham employee headcount. The following City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting coverage is brought to you by the Government Channel, a service of the City of Framingham.
Meeting of the City Council Finance Subcommittee to order. It's Wednesday, May 13th. It's just after 5 o'clock. I am Michael Cannon. Councilor and Chair Ottaviani is on his way, so hopefully I will not be flying the plane soon, but we'll try to keep the altitude and all the aviation analogies flowing. This evening, we've got public participation. We'll approve some minutes. We will take some action on, apparently there's some budget stuff going on, but we'll also talk about a transfer for Public Works. Community Preservation Committee referral is before us this evening, and the Capital Improvement Program as well. Member prerogatives and the adjournment, and of course, tongue-in-cheek, that discussion on the budget. Is there anybody in the room for public participation or online? I'll look. I'm out of practice doing this. For any items that are not on our agenda this evening. I see one hand up, and Ms. Orthifer, you are ready to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I noticed recently that the economic development plan was recently presented, and I want to know kind of how we plan on incorporating some of those ideas and thoughts into our zoning plans, our revenue plans, and I would like some clarity as to what exactly the city feels that the Pearl Street garage fits into all that. So that's what I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orthifer. And I believe their EDC is coming before the full council on May 19th. So I encourage you to tune in or join us. Anybody else in the room for public participation? Matters not on our agenda this evening. Seeing none, moving forward to the minutes for...
So moved.
Second.
For April 14th. Excellent. Ms. Malik?
Yes.
Mr. Stefanini?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I, yes. Thank you. Order 2026-043, upon request of the Director of Public Works, a referral to the Finance Subcommittee, consideration of a transfer in the amount of $10,000 from the FY26 capital budget appropriation for sanitation roll-off vehicle to the 2 FY26 capital budget appropriations for sanitation packers. Mr. Lewis?
Councilors, good evening.
Good evening.
This request is for just the transfer of some funds for sanitation vehicles. In FY26, we got appropriation for 2 Packers and 1 roll-off truck. As we pursued the purchase of these vehicles, we found out that the vendor would not hold the quotes, and the Packers were increased. Lo and behold, we found out we had enough money left in the roll-off, the appropriation for the roll-off truck. So it's a simple transfer of funds from one to another so that we can purchase. We're not asking for any extra money, and just a transfer, a simple transfer.
Any questions from Mr. Stefanini?
My only question is, we talked about,
we talked about dealing with the handful of vehicles left so that we could submit the entire capital project to the full council. Do we have a date for that, or do we know what we did on that? Because originally that was part of that.
I would defer to the chair.
FY26.
What?
This is FY26.
This is for last year's appropriation.
Yes, no, I know what you're doing, but it was in the, unrelated to this. I'm asking a question of, to sort of, to just remind us that we had some extra vehicles that we said we were going to deal with, And I want to make sure we didn't forget about those because they're holding up the entire capital project vote to the full council. We passed everything except for a handful of,
Yes, I don't have my notes on that.
no, I'm not asking you.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just say, Kathy, if we could, just a reminder for our next meeting, whatever, we just need to make sure that we don't let that dangle.
I think the chair has a date certain, I just don't, I'm not privy to what it is. so
Okay, I
we-
didn't know what it was. Anyways, I have no questions on this.
Is there a motion, or do we want?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. King?
Yes,
Mr. Stefanini?
Yes.
Ms. Malik?
Yes.
And I, yes.
since we're all here, we can just vote.
Ah, that's right, thank you, since we're all here, thank you. I appreciate you telling me that now instead of when we,
I'm so used to the old way.
You're going to see if you could do it a couple times.
I'm pleased I could remember everybody's name. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Upon request of the acting CFO, is he here, is Mr. Tassino joining us?
He's on his vacation.
Oh, he did take the vacation? Ah, okay.
Very much deserved it and earned, so he's on vacation.
Okay. It's a good thing it's not a busy time, but
Mr. Chair, I'm on Zoom if you have any questions.
okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Upon request of the then acting CFO, referral to the Finance Subcommittee, consideration of a budget transfer. It looks like it was $6,500, now it's $15,728 from the salary budget line to the operating budget line for continued temporary worker, which is now to allow the temporary worker to, so perhaps, Mr. Turbot, you could share with us what has changed. You're asking us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, the Treasurer's Office had been short-staffed for roughly about a year. They did recently fill the Customer Service Specialist position. The temporary position was expected to cease in the beginning of May. However, we recently had a sudden resignation, an immediate resignation, with the fiscal specialist focused on cash reconciliation, cash receipts, cash postings, turnovers. So the request is to be able to fund the temp individual through June 30th. And I would just say that with the resignation of that particular position, it's really critical during this time of the year with the amount of collections coming in that we're getting those posted timely so we can do timely cash reconciliations to make sure we know the city's cash position, So we would request the transfer of $15,728 be transferred from the general fund Treasurer Department salary budget to the operating budget to continue that through June 30th.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mr. King?
No, I'm in favor, yes.
I too will vote in the affirmative, but help me understand the difference in, is it just the timing that is making this more expensive, or did we forecast it incorrectly?
We had
initially?
forecasted it through May, and then the remainder of the time hadn't been forecasted, but because of this resignation, we need to extend it for the remaining roughly 7 weeks of time to get to the end of June, and it's roughly about $1,400 a week for that individual.
Oh, okay, I had misread it. I thought it was the end of May. It says May 10th, so it's a little bit more than a month. That's why the numbers. That makes sense. Very good. Ms. Malik?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we can do this the old-fashioned way. All in favor? Excellent. We live in the future. This is great.
Very nice.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. Upon request of the Community Preservation Committee, referral to the Finance Subcommittee, reservation of FY 2027 Community Preservation Funds. Ms. O'Donnell and Mr. Mahoney.
Good evening. My name is Heather O'Donnell. I'm the Community Preservation Coordinator for the City of Framingham. Tonight, I'm pleased to present the Community Preservation Committee's budget for fiscal year 2027. The CPC approved its 2027 budget on April 13th, 2026. Framingham's community preservation funds are derived from three sources: local revenue collected from a 1% surcharge on real property taxes, an annual state match, and earned interest and earnings. For fiscal year 2027, the anticipated local revenue is $1,921,513. The state match estimate was provided by the Department of Revenue and is expected to be 15.5%, which equals $298,603. Lastly, interest and earnings are projected to be $234,701. The total available funds are anticipated to be $2,454,817. Each year, the Community Preservation Committee is required to spend or set aside 10% for each of the 3 categories: open space and outdoor recreation, historic preservation, and community housing. The funds are to be reserved in separate accounts. This year, the amount reserved for each category is $245,482. The CPC is permitted to use up to 5% each year for administrative expenses, like consultant fees, appraisals, and surveys done as part of CPC's due diligence. The CPC approved the set aside for the full 5% this fiscal year, which is $122,741. The remaining funds for the fiscal year are put into an account called budgeted reserves. These funds can be used for projects within any of the 3 categories and equals $1,595,630. The fiscal year 2027 budget does not include the CPC's fund balance, which currently has around $400,000 in it. Those funds are carried over from previous years from funds that were not spent. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. O'Donnell. Any questions, Mr. Stefanini?
Other than for your salary, what do you use these funds for?
The administrative funds?
Yeah, do you use them for like when you need to do environmental study or something like that?
We could do an environmental study. This year, we did a bridge evaluation for Simpson Park. That was due diligence, so that's one example. We've also done appraisals. So
that comes out of this, it doesn't come out of the actual project funds?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Tom Mahoney, the chair.
Please.
It should be pointed out that whatever is not expended in the administrative funds category for the year is rolled back into the excuse me, into the budgeted reserves or the fund balance, CPA fund balance. So we start out with 0 funding in the administrative budget for the next year. So it's not carried over.
Was there anything that is rolling back from this?
Probably. We're not entirely sure how much it'll be. It's probably going to be around $30,000 this year.
Okay. And when do we have a sense for maybe the CFO or anybody that wants to comment of how much we can count on the state match? What should we be concerned about here? And is there a reason to not move this forward with a recommendation this evening?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't foresee a reason not to go forward with the recommendation. The state's been pretty consistent when they've provided guidance through DOR on those amounts. I think the only further down the road issue may be as more communities see the value and the benefit to adopting the CPA program, it'll put more strain on the state matches, but I still think that we can rely on the number that the CPA is going with.
Okay. And just more of a broad question. What are your sense, just would love some brief insight, what did we learn from the last year where, you guys had to, it really can't be overstated, continuing my aviation analogies, you had to build the plane while you were flying it, and so many of these processes needed to be developed, something new for Framingham, and you always learn something from that, so I appreciate and applaud that work. What have we learned now that we're a few years into it that is going to impact how we do things, or how perhaps maybe the council or the administration can be helpful to aiding the community in availing themselves of these funds? What did we learn? What can we do better? Not to put you on the spot. If you don't have anything top of mind, that's fine too.
No, actually, we've thought about that too. We're trying to streamline our process a little bit so that we can come to our decisions a little bit earlier than we have. We're going to put in place a policy which we are discussing right now, whereby if an applicant doesn't provide us the information in a timely fashion, then we're going to just drop them out instead of what we did this year, kept asking them for more information, which put us behind in what we were trying to do. So we're trying to eliminate that by cut and dry. If you don't have the information by X date, your application will be rejected. So that's the main thing that we're looking at right now.
Okay. In that spirit, and I'll leave the comments here, I'm hopeful we can be cognizant of the fact, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand this over to you.
You keep going. I didn't set it. Thank
Okay,
you. I'm
all
sorry.
right. No, that's fine.
Apologize.
I appreciate what you're saying, but in the spirit of us, our goal really should be making it as easy as possible for the community to advance projects that there is some consensus in moving forward. And sometimes projects get complicated and, you've got a nonprofit or a neighborhood group that's seeking funding from this over here and from this pot and from CPC, and there's so much fluidity in those processes that sometimes municipal governments can get, to make it easier on us, we're going to have a really rigid policy. So I hope you'll still maintain some level of discretion where you'll be, when there's consensus of moving a project forward, and maybe some more collaboration with the administration and all of those moving parts, because sometimes it's an issue where, well, Parks and Rec is working on this, and Public Works is involved here, and just more people talking might be helpful. But I'd be cautious of the rigidity, even though it's very well-intentioned, and I was witness to some of that frustration. But it all managed to come together at the end. But maybe the earlier process of figuring out, there seems to be consensus on these projects. Let's make sure that we identify this, and this, so we can ultimately celebrate successful projects at the end.
We're hoping to try and get the applicants actually to provide us applications early instead of, as typically done, if we have a deadline of September 1st, they usually come in on August 31st. So we're trying to move that along too, which puts less of a burden on us to finish in a timely manner also.
I think the other thing, my takeaway was that I want to be more proactive in helping applicants understand what they need to submit. So I'm planning to meet with all of any project that's eligible, planning to meet with those applicants to go through and explain what they actually need to do. So I think that will help also.
I think so, too. Mr. Stefanini?
Thank you. If I could just amplify on what the vice chair said. First of all, thank you for what you do. You have a tough job. As much as it is, everything's giving out money is easy. It isn't, because it's finite, and you have a lot of people asking on it. The one thing I would just caution you, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you and I have talked about this on other topics a lot over the years, the more rigid we become, the more we limit ourselves to people who are government, more sophisticated applicants. And one of the things when we wrote the CPC ordinance was to try to figure out a way to help those less sophisticated, community-based folks get through the process. And I think meeting with folks who are qualified, I think, will be helpful. But I would hate to see us get to a point where the only people who get any money out of this are our city departments who don't want to come to us for capital that taxpayers should be paying for, and we lose out on a historic church, or we lose out on a tomb building, or some garden in the community that needs small money to, if you haven't been to the garden you invested in, you should look at it. Just small dollars have made such a difference in the lives of an entire neighborhood. Sure. And so I know you're not leaving that behind, but I would just caution you to balance that, because the earlier, the more rigid you are, the more difficult it is for the less sophisticated to get through the process.
I echo that completely. Any other comments? And forgive me, was there a motion?
I'll move their request.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any
Second.
further discussion? All those in favor? Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as the chair gets settled, continued consideration and discussion of the FY27, FY2031 recommended capital improvement program. The public hearing was opened on 3/3. It remains open, and our conversation continues. So I don't know if the administration has someone for this, or if we're taking up action. I'll hand it over to Mr. Ottaviani.
Thank you, and I apologize for being late. Welcome to downtown traffic and trains, right? Mr. Mayor, do you folks want to pick up on this, or do you want me to start with the council, or what would you like to do?
No, I think the way we left it is that you were going to discuss certain equipment purchases that's the final things that are left in deciding on the capital budget. And we're waiting for your direction on that, Mr. Chairman.
There were 9 items, as I see, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to just go through them one by
Sure,
one?
yep. You guys
So
good
as
with
you're
that?
getting
One by
settled-
One by one, the items? Those 9 items that I highlighted? Okay, Mr. Stephanie, you've got the floor.
So the first one, just while you're getting settled, was Bowditch Stadium scoreboard. We talked a little bit about
Yep.
whether we focus on raising the money privately. I don't know if that was Mr. Cannon's suggestion or your suggestion.
It was mine, and he piggybacked on it, but what I did do was I have requested a list of everybody from Veterans Park, all the donations we got on Veterans Park. I should have that, I should have had it today, but I didn't get it today on my email. Unless it came from when I left to get here. Because I figured those are folks we can work with, so then I was gonna reach out. Because I remember at one time, we used to have the Friends of the, like we have the Friends of Callahan. There used to be a group that was run by Bob Marusi, I believe, in the older days, and it was the Friends of Park and Rec. But then I think something happened. It was totally dissolved, I was told recently. I haven't gotten all the statistics on it or the info, but it does no longer exist. And they could be, they're a nonprofit. They could go out and go get the money, raise the money for the scoreboard, because Park and Recs can't go out and do that directly, and neither can we. So we've got to figure out how we can do that. I think when we did Veterans Park, we did it through the Framingham Fire Department, through one of their nonprofits. I could be wrong, but I believe that's.
You're correct.
I think that's how we did it. So I should have that list. I know we need, the board is in desperate need, so I will make sure I get that and get that to my colleagues. I'll get it to Mary and Ms. Kelly or to Kathy, and they can distribute it, so at least we have a list to start from, and then figure out if we can get the fire folks to help us, their nonprofit, or if we have to resurrect the Friends of the Park and Recs, because they were a very active group. I remember when they did the cleanup on Danforth Park, I think they paid for the sign on Danforth Park, and, they were active, and they were parents and folks and community members that, had a vested interest in Parks and Rec, so that's all on that.
So what are we doing? Are we going to skip it, or?
I think we pass on that for the time being, right, until we get that information and decide what we're going to do. Then you want to go down to the next one, Public Works?
That's the loader.
Yep.
Bob, I think.
You want to copy mine, real quick? That's the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one? Another. Oh, here we go. There you go, Councilor Cannon. That cheat sheet's a good one. It's easier. So it's the highlighted items. Do you have one, Councilor King? You good?
Yeah, an extra one, I'll take it, but.
Do we have an extra highlighted one? Okay. It's only 2 things. I'm going to mark one up. I got one.
I can do the same.
Thank you, Councilor Cannon. It's only so many items. It just makes it easier. Well, actually, here, give him this one. I got a list. All right. So a little farther down on that list is the Public Works Case 812G loader, $315,000. Thoughts? Is 3 for Public Works in a row. There's a fuel island replacement design, $294,000. There's Public Works Chevy Equinox EV replacement times 2, $43,000 each. There's a couple things for schools still. There was technology, sewer, and water.
I just have a question about process.
Yes.
It doesn't seem, since Mr. Lewis left, I think, unless he's behind the podium, that we made it a point of inviting the department heads to this meeting to talk about these things.
Well, if you looked at the agenda, you would have saw it, but I don't know if Ms. Kelly reached out to them or not, but,
we went through each of these at great lengths.
and then I do have a note from Ms. Kelly that the Public Works Fuel Island and the 2 Equinox EV replacements were voted upon and approved by a 5-0-0 vote. We have to revisit them and revote them, but I don't know why.
Okay.
So that's the cheat sheet I have.
So looking at this, I'd like to skip on the 2 Chevy Equinox until we finish with the fleet policy. But
Okay.
other than that, I don't have any objections or concerns on the other items.
Okay?
Of other items of DPW or other items highlighted
The
on
other
this
7
list?
highlighted items.
All the highlighted items.
Anybody else on the council on the highlighted items?
I have a question.
Alec?
To Councilor Stefanini, when you say until we're done with the fleet policy, which implies to me that there's work happening on the fleet policy. Would you say that's a true statement, or?
I would defer to Anthony on that question.
Okay.
So I have met with Mike Tessino. He provided me with a list of vehicles. He's working on updating that list with additional information that was requested. For example, more information on the condition, the mileage, that sort of thing. I don't see that being completed before your budget process is complete.
But I don't think we anticipated that. I think we anticipated that we would revisit it after we finished the budget. We would do, at least from my conversation with Mr. Tessino, that after we were done with the budget, we would have a fleet policy discussion where we looked at our policy, which hadn't been updated in 5 or 6 years, and our fleet. And it seems like waiting and spending your dollars when you have an answer to that made sense to me. So yes, we won't have an answer in the next couple of weeks, but we would push this one off, move forward with all the other capital projects, and then sometime after the budget, when we have time, we'll deal with the fleet policy and fleet list, et cetera. It's a lot of vehicles and it's complicated. But we haven't done that. The last time it was done by, I believe, Judy Grove.
Right. A few councils ago.
Yeah.
Council Malik, follow-up?
Yeah, follow-up question. So the question was about the development of a vehicle policy, and you replied about what I would say maybe is like the vehicle assessment.
So I think
what
that's
we
step
have.
one before,
Yes, for sure.
Before a policy. I think, there's policies, I think, on usage and that sort of thing, but on looking at if you want to, or you and the administration want some sort of consolidation of vehicles. So I think that has to be step one of evaluating the current fleet in order to develop that policy going forward.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Anybody else? Do you want to make a motion, Council Stephanie?
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Well, raise your hand.
Okay. I would move we add all the vehicles except for those two to the capital list that we've already approved.
I have just a question,
Malik.
Counselor.
Do you want a second for
Obiana?
discussion? I'll second it for discussion, then Council Malik. You're up.
Okay, so you had mentioned, Chair, that we needed to re-vote because we voted already on this 500? Help me understand.
Not all of them. I read, Secretary Kelly noted that the Public Works Fuel Island and the 2 Equinox EV replacements were voted upon and approved for a recommendation, 500. Maybe revisit them or revote on them, because I think it has to do with the policy. That was the note on the sheet I got.
So I think we did vote on them. I feel comfortable keeping them in the budget. It's not totally clear to me why we're re-voting on them, but yeah, I'm fine with them staying in the capital budget.
Okay. So Council Stefanini, your motion is to approve all the items except the 2 Equinox EV replacements, correct?
Correct.
Okay, there was a motion, there's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? The vote's 4-1. And we'll wait, Anthony, when you get back with Mr. Tessino and you put that stuff together, we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a quick question
Absolutely,
about that?
Ken.
What are we, and thanks for the insight, Anthony. Do you have a sense of when they'll have that ready? I'm kind of surprised it isn't. I thought that'd be something that they were kind of monitoring on an ongoing basis. Do you have a sense of when?
I don't have a date. I think when we originally had this discussion, we were talking sometime in June. I think there's a lot of work on kind of evaluating the cars. I have the list of vehicles. It's just evaluating, the condition and kind of when they will be up for replacement.
Okay. Mr. Cicino, any, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Any insight? I figured the request, I knew we probably wouldn't have the opportunity to discuss it until sometime in June. But I'm kind of surprised, do we not maintain that info on all the things that we've discussed there? And I don't know if you're trying to turn your camera on, but maybe it's not letting you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir, yep.
Yeah, I can't get the camera going, but,
If we promote, can you promote him to panelist? There you go.
You're already a panelist.
I don't think
No, he was there as an attendee. There he is.
Okay. MAT's here, no?
As a panelist, you can.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah, I see.
Sorry about that.
We can hear you.
There we
So
go.
There you go.
I think the subcommittee wanted to revisit in June. We'll have all the information by next week. We have to get, the three things that you asked for were the mileage and hours on all the vehicles, what condition they were in, and if they had GPS or not. I'll have that information the middle of next week. It's a lot of work. We have over 600 pieces of equipment and vehicles to gather that information on, but I will have it next week.
That's why, yes, I appreciate that. That's why I was surprised that we don't have an ongoing process to monitor the condition of the fleet, because it's really hard to do when it's asked for out of the blue, but I would have just assumed we keep our eye on it for, monitoring our inventory. And I don't believe the GPS ask was whether or not it had it, although that's helpful. It was the data on the usage, the actual maps.
Okay, first we have to come up with a list of who has what for GPS, and then we, different departments have different types of GPS, and we can work that out as we go along. Not everybody uses the same GPS systems.
Okay, thank you.
Council Stefanini.
And just so it's not lost in this, we wanted to have a fulsome discussion of our vehicle policy and which vehicles go home, which vehicles don't go home, and where they're assigned to, et cetera, so that we're not lost in the oil changes. The original conversation was really about policy and use.
I have that for you. It'll be ready.
Yeah, no, I know, but, and I hope we're lucky to get to it in June.
Right.
Did you want to, Councilman, did you? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Tassino. Next order of business, a continued discussion and planning of the FY 2027 budget.
Wait, I'm sorry, Chair.
Yep.
So did we just vote the capital budget that is now going to be sent back to council?
Yeah, 4 to 1, correct.
Okay.
Everything except the EVs.
So this will be on the,
Well, Council King will put it on the agenda for the full council.
okay, awesome. Thanks for clarifying.
No, thank you. Number 5, continued discussion and planning of the FY 2027 budget. Mr. Mayor, Mr. CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard you loud and clear about your response to the budget we submitted last week. And we appreciate the feedback that we got from you, and we agreed to pull it back and do what we could to revise it to get closer to the parameters that you've set for us. And we've been working every day and night, working on crunching numbers and trying to get closer to where we feel you'd like to see the budget land. And tonight, we have an update on our goal to get to that position. We're not there yet. We need about another week, and maybe we'll have something more definitive for you. But we've done a lot of work. We've revised some of the revenue figures and, of course, the expenditure side by incorporating some of the new numbers we've gotten from the discussions at the state level from the Senate and the House regarding the governor's proposed budget. So we've added that in there and indicated that if we're successful in getting the increase, for example, the increased state aid under Chapter 70, we would recommend that go to the school budget. But in order to get to the numbers that you've directed us to get to or asked us to get to, we've had to make some more cuts in the budget, obviously, and that also includes further cuts to the school budget, taking into account that whatever gets cut, the Chapter 70 additional money will be added back if it materializes. So tonight, Brian is going to run through a draft PowerPoint presentation. I appreciate that. I apologize, that we haven't been able to give it anything to you because we've been working on this right up to this afternoon, and it's still in draft form. But we hope, based on your feedback from tonight, we can get closer to the goal, and we'll have something for you next Wednesday to present to you. And then, depending on how that ends up, then we will formally submit a revised budget to you per the terms of the time schedule and everything. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian to go through it, and we'll see where we end up tonight, and then continue work on this for next Wednesday night's meeting.
And I just want to thank you on behalf of the council and the committee, because I know it's tireless work that needs to be done, and it's right up to the last minute. So I appreciate everything you and the administration and the new CFO is trying to do to get us to a number that we can all survive with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Mr. Chair. So can you go to the next page, please, Kathy? Okay. So on this page, we've created a revenue projection for fiscal '27, starting with the base levy of $230 million. I think we heard very loud and clear that 4.5% was unacceptable and for the tax levy. So the fiscal '27 proposal would raise 3.5% within the levy, which would raise $8,072,000. New growth, we have talked to the assessor, and he's still very comfortable with $2.3 million for fiscal '27. The debt exclusion for the school would be the same $3,099,000. So raised within the levy for fiscal '27, estimated at this current time is $244.1 million. State aid, we have taken to the Senate number. We do believe that at a minimum, the Chapter 70 portion will remain consistent with what both the House and the Senate have put out since they mirrored each other. So state aid, we're projecting at $111.5 million. Local estimated receipts, we've continued to look at them and understanding how DOR views this. We are not recommending any increases from the original $28.3 million that we have proposed here through the budget process. However, we are beginning to look at fees.
Just a point of Could I just impose upon you? I know this is a last-minute thing, so I'm not going to dwell on it. Can you just email this to Kathy, just so we can get, I mean, it's not ideal that the public can't see it, but I know you're working on posting it, but I'm just struggling to read.
Public should be able to see it on the TV.
Well, you're right, I mean,
But it's hard to see. I can with my
I
glasses.
can't flip back and
Well, we
forth.
can make that a full-screen slideshow. That would help a little bit.
Go up to view.
Consistent with our rules, it would be helpful to have the document. I'm not going to dwell on that
You.
piece of it, but if you
Very
could email
top.
this so I can at least see it, that would be helpful.
Can we make the slideshow full screen?
I'm working on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't realize you heard that.
We got part 2 of the 18 tonight. So
I'm
it's just-
sorry, sorry.
Slideshow. Click on the slideshow button.
In my day, it was F5.
More cooks in the kitchen, the better, I guess.
Go to slide. Overhead projector. Top bed.
We said we weren't going to hold you to it, so
We can't because she's
I'm
not going
fine,
to
I
get it.
just can't.
You need to send it to her.
there
Kathy,
you go.
what email should we send it to?
You can send it to mine, Kay Carey. At FraminghamMA.gov.
K. Carey, he should come up, K-C-A-R-E-Y,
Yep.
at framingham.gov, and then she can send it to us.
Hey, Carrie, okay, hold on.
Got it? Thank you.
Right here.
And we
Yeah,
did
that's
say
much
that
easier
we
to
would be lenient with it's just, I'm struggling to see it visually, so I appreciate the,
I fully understand. I'm sending it right now.
No problem.
thank
And the
you.
full screen's much better, even on the computer. You can read it.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I sent it, I just sent it to you. Okay.
Right. All right, stop. You absolutely continue.
Okay, do you want me to start over or continue to where I was?
Continue.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So I believe, Mr. Chair, that I was on local estimated receipts, and as I noted, we are still recommending the $28.3 million, understanding how DOR looks at this and increases. At this point, we're not recommending an increase to that. Enterprise fund transfers, the same $3.8 million as previously anticipated and budgeted, and other transfers, primarily PEG, $453,000. So total, all other revenue sources we're projecting for fiscal '27, $144,062,000, giving us a total projected revenue of $388.1 million. Next slide, please. Yep.
What happened to the full screen?
Okay, right there, perfect, thank you.
Okay.
So on the third slide, on the top of this is the recommended budget that the administration presented to the city council of $401.7 million. The second portion of this is what I call the budget reconciliation, where we take the revenue from page 1 that we projected from real and personal property taxes and other local sources, $388.1 million. The administration heard the council that $14.1 million in free cash was not acceptable, so this budget has a projection of $10 million in free cash. So total revenue from all sources, $398.1 million. Taking the recommended budget from above at $401.17 million. And because we went with the Senate revenue numbers, we also need to adjust for the increase in cherry sheet and offset charges, because there was an increase in both the House and the Senate budgets for those. And that change from the governor's budget of $9.18 million is reflected above is $1,705,000. So the total expenditures would be $403.4 million. Subtracting the $398.1 million of revenue that we're projecting now currently leaves us with a deficit of $5.3 million. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Deficit, what two budgets are you comparing for the deficit? Are you comparing the mayor's proposed
We took
budget?
the 401, added the additional cherry sheet charges, and subtracted the revenue to get to that deficit of where we're trying to close from that budget, okay? So we've spent a lot of time going through the budgets with the mayor and the COO, trying to understand where we could make some reductions. Some of these had already been potentials that have been discussed, some overtime in the police and fire, as well as getting down to 2 police vehicles, additional overtime in police. City departments, we're going through the operating side budget, which is where that level funding is of $207,000. Department reorganizations, we also heard the council that we should be looking at reorganizations. The administration isn't ready to fully roll out what the reorganization is going to be, but we have projected, the finance department, with the understanding of what the administration is looking at, has projected roughly $263,000 in cost savings with that. Adjustment for staff changes primarily relates to any potential retirements that could happen that maybe we have informal notification of, and what the replacement would be versus what that individual is currently at in salary. Vacancy review, I worked with Anthony. We took Councilor Stefanini's question about the frictional vacancy that happens throughout the year. We have only looked at the 3 largest departments, being police, fire, and DPW right now. The 3-year average of that vacancy rate is about $1.1 million on a 3-year average basis. So what we're proposing to do is we would take $550,000 in savings in the budget. We would take $550,000 and transfer it to salary reserve. And what we would do is we would manage the vacancies in those departments, and if they're not lasting as long as they typically have, we would have a little bit of coverage from that frictional vacancy rate that we typically end up with on June 30th to be able to, through the city council to the subcommittee, to ask for a transfer to kind of offset that. It's a way to manage those vacancy, the frictional rate that we do have throughout the year. Anthony and I are also still working on the remainder of the departments to see if there's any additional savings that we can leverage out of that. I will say from past experience, this does take a lot of management and oversight in looking at it, so it may be my recommendation that we start here with the plan that we look at the other departments in aggregate as we go through the remainder of fiscal 26 into 27 with a proposal into 28, okay? We've had discussions with the school. The mayor was recommending an additional $2 million in cuts. It's reflected here at $1,239,000, which is the net difference between the additional Chapter 70 school aid that he has committed to the schools. So currently, in the short time that we've kind of looked at this and been working on it, we have just under $3.1 million in reductions. With a starting point of $5.3 million, we have about $2.2 million to close at this point, which I've committed to the mayor that we will work the rest of this week into next week to have that down to zero. It's going to be difficult, but we will go through the next few days and continue to refine and push where we can to get the additional reductions necessary to balance the budget with this proposal. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
So does that get us to 3.5 and 10 million?
That's correct, yes.
That's the number that we
Yes,
talked about.
that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll open it up to the council members, before I go to the audience. Don't all jump at once. Councilor King.
So as looking at the aggregate, the overview of this budget, I mean, I don't know all the specifics of it. I appreciate very much the fact that you delivered pretty much the product that, I don't want to say we asked for, but certainly a vastly improved product in that you're only using that word, it's only $10 million, but that.
Better than 14.
It's better than 14, right? And it's, it keeps us closer to where we were this year. So I appreciate, obviously that is still way too high, but I think you only can do so much year to year. So I would say two things. I think in general, as a structure, I would be in favor of this. I don't love the 3.5%. I don't like it above the 2.5% for the reasons we've talked about regularly. But I think this year, given where we stand, maybe we have to do that. I also think, inadvertently, we've done it the last 2 years because we took 2.5% of the excess capacity, even though we didn't use the excess capacity the last couple of years. We took the growth off the excess capacity the last couple of years. So we have done it. So I think 3.5%, though not, I hope we do long term, I think is something I can live with for this year. And the 10 million, I wouldn't want to live with any more than that. I'd like to see less, but I also understand that maybe that's not going to happen this year. But I would say that I believe, and I still believe that if we're going to go well above the 2.5%, and there may be some merit in it at some point, we should not just do it. I said this in the past. We should do it with a vote. It doesn't have to be a typical legal 2.5 override vote, because we don't have to do that. We can't do that because of our excess capacity. I think one thing we should consider, I know you're not going to do, but I'm going to put it out there anyways, is I think you should work with us to put an underride in the ballot and ask the voters if they'd like to take the excess capacity off the books, and that way we're back in the business of having to do an override if we do it. So I think that's the first thing we should do, is I think we should do an underride, take our excess capacity off, and put us back to even playing ground. The problem with that, I know you're going to say, is bonding and stuff like that, but the bonding companies can't like $10 million in free cash on an annual basis any more than they would like an underride, because the underride would still give us the opportunity to go to the voters like every other town in the state. So I'd like to see us do that. I suspect we won't do that, but I would like to see us do that. But if we don't do an underride, I do believe next year, and it will be more in line with the earlier budget process, which overall, I think, with all due respect to the fact that the chairman of the Budget Review Committee is in the room, I think that I blame myself to some extent. I think they tinkered a little bit too much with some of the timelines that didn't need to be tinkered with, and we should have probably spoken up more about that. So it's not just their fault. I know I personally didn't say much about it, so I'm not sure what they are really trying to accomplish. But let's take advantage of what they did. And with the earlier timeline next year, I think we should stick with that next year. And if by February 1st, which is even a little bit further ahead of their timeline, you're going to need more than 2.5%, then at that point, we put it out to an advisory vote where we'll have plenty of time, to the voters, where we say we're thinking of going above 2.5% to 5.5%, 7.5%, wherever we're going. And this is the reasons why, and these are the things we would do. That way, I think it's fair. So I could with that type of a commitment, I mean, I'm not asking for the commitment on the underride. I would like it, but I would like the commitment on the advisory question next year. I could support this budget, but I do think that it's good work. I think you listen to us, and I think it gets it not to a great area, but I think it gets us to a place that I could support.
Thank you, Councilor King. Councilor Stefanini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't repeat what Mr. King has said because I agree with most of that. A few points that I think are also important to keep front and center in this. I guess 4 things I'd ask you to think about, and I know you've got a lot going on. One is I'd like to see what this means long range. One of the things that's very clear here is the CBAs and personnel costs are driving a lot of this. It'd be good for us to know where those are next year, the year after, so we know whether this is a reoccurring pain we're going to be occurring to ourselves, or whether this is something that we're dealing with this year for particular reasons, but maybe not. It'd be good to see what that projection is outward. And I think it would be helpful for us to have an executive session, the FinCom with the Finance Committee of the School Committee, to go through and talk about collective bargaining. 2 is risks and choices. I know you're building a lot of that into your budget. It would be good for you when you transmit to us to identify those risks and choices so that we can either agree or disagree, or at least have some visibility as to that understanding. So when you come back to us 6 months from now and say, oops, this is a problem, we're all on the same page in terms of, we should have anticipated that, we did anticipate that. Or people are complaining that leaf collection is less than it was. Well, that's because we changed it. 3rd is reorganization. Some of this requires reorganization. I would suggest to you that either you file with the budget or shortly after the budget a reorganization plan in accordance with the charter, so that we're dealing with that in real time with the budget. So 6 months from now, we're not dealing with a reorganization vote that isn't then tethered to a budget. Because it's easy to not be in favor of a reorganization when there's no money attached to it. We're reorganizing because it's making sense out of where we are. And last is our entire budget schedule is sort of thrown out. It'd be helpful if you work with Kathy and Marion to figure out what does our budget schedule look like so that the public has some sense of where they participate, how they participate in that process. So long-range projections, risk choices so that we have some sense of that, reorg, and some sense of public participation. That's my input, and thank you for this effort. I think it's worth it.
Thank you, Councilor Stephanie. And it's something Councilor Malik had brought up a while ago. The general public doesn't really know what we're going to talk about on any given night. So Councilor Stephanie's points are well taken, just so the general public, because, for something that's so involved and so important, we've got a half a dozen people in the room, okay? And it just, and you could almost name the names who's going to be here before the night started, and because they care. It is what it is. Other than that, it is truly appreciated because there's a lot of work that went into this in a matter of a short period of time. So I'm not going to reiterate what Councilor King, Councilor Stefanini said, but, at the last meeting I talked about a cliff, and we need to pull it in. You read about Brookline, a $23.5 million Brookline voters on May 5th, 2026, and that's why we want to hear from the voters, okay? Overwhelmingly approved a $23.25 million property tax override by about 3,000 votes to fund the schools and town services. This override, the largest in Massachusetts history, will result in roughly an 18% tax increase for residents over the next 3 years to avoid significant layoffs in services. To Councilor King's point, you take off the excess capacity, we need money, we go to the voters and we ask, and they tell us, what they'd like to see us do. Because we all work for them, technically. Well, not even technically, we all work for them. One way or another, everybody in this room, we work for them. Councilor Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo everything that's been said with the exception of kind of where we are financially in terms of what the ultimate proposal is. I think the discussion on where we go strategically is right on. I think going to the voters is wise, even if it's somewhat informal, to get a sense of where they want us to be. Brookline's an interesting place to reference because it's imposed over a number of years. Maybe that's a creative way to do that. Maybe that's if we have to go down that road, we do that. I think also an underride is smart, taking that excess capacity off the books because it gives us a sense of confidence and comfort that we really shouldn't have. And it's also a term that's very misleading to the public. Oh, you have this excess capacity, like it's free cash, like it's sitting in an account somewhere, when it's not. And typically when cities and towns have to go after, and it's rare, but when they tap into excess capacity, it's at a time when taxpayers are the most strapped financially, and that incremental rise in expense is at a really difficult time. But I kind of wonder, sort of tongue-in-cheek, whatever the discussions as the initial budget was being crafted, it was like, well, I think we need to do 3.5 and 10. Yeah, but there's no way that the council's going to vote for 3.5, and there's no way. Okay, so here's what we do. Let's go in at something crazy, 4 and change, and I don't know, $14 million. And then we come back at 3.5 and 10, because my goodness gracious, it sounds like a bargain. This is still, and I don't think that actually happened, but not a bad strategy, because it would have brought us here. But I really worry about where we are. It's costing taxpayers $100 million more a year, give or take, to operate their government in much of the same way than it did not that long ago. And certainly some expenses, a lot of them have gone up, but they haven't gone up in a way that equates to this mathing. So I can't support it, but I appreciate that the work is being done. We're paying the price for so much of the things that haven't been done in the years that we have been a city, that so many of them were talked about by my friends and colleagues here that were on the Charter Commission, things that we weren't doing as a town that, would be among the things that we should tackle as a city. And for, various reasons that hasn't happened. So I guess the discussion continues, but I appreciate the work. I like the ideas of going to the voters so they have a real vested sense, not just what, we're going to take by force, but they should have a meaningful input into that decisioning. And if they say, yeah, take X, great. We've got a mandate, or at least some confidence there. Because I get very, very few calls with people saying, I've got the extra money to give to the city of Framingham. Where do I make the check payable to? Very few. But I hear about the people who are very worried about staying in their homes because they're, they've outgrown what they have, but their options going forward are limited, and that's a whole other discussion. But anyway, I thank you for the work, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councilor Malik.
I have a question. Curious if you have looked at refinancing the pension fund. If you could speak to that.
I haven't done an in-depth look at it, but I would suggest that we are on the 10-yard line in terms of where we are with fully funding the pension. And I think that being so close to the end, it essentially the last payment to fully fund it, and then only normal nominal operating cost on a go-forward basis after that exists in 2030. So we're three fiscal years away from being one of the few communities across the Commonwealth that has a fully funded pension system. And I know that a lot of times during these types of struggles, communities look at it. We're a multi-member pension system, and we'd have to go through PARAC to get them to approve a schedule. And I don't know.
Sorry to interrupt, but I don't know what PARAC is.
So PARAC is the pension board that would approve the new funding schedule if we were to do that. And I don't know what the impact would be on the other two members of the pension system as well. I don't know if we could just do it. We could look at it, but I don't think that it would be something I would recommend, being so close to having a fully funded pension system, because I think that that's very critical. And I think that retirees and people in the system look at the management of the system, and we're so close to fully funding that I don't know why we would want to continue to increase our contributions for a longer period of time when we're almost there. So it has been brought up. It's been brought up to me. I will look into it, but I don't know that it would be a recommendation that I would make, because I think it would just add to the longer term issues and sustainability that we're looking at and focused on right now. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor King, then Councilor Stefanini.
So two different comments. First of all, I wasn't going to comment about the pension system, but since it came up, I totally agree with the CFO. I think it would be foolhardy at this point to do it. I don't even think, frankly, you should look at it. For the reasons, I was taking time to look at it. I mean, it's not up to me, obviously, but I don't think you should look at it, because it would save a lot of money. But it would cost a ton of money. over the years that we're not going to have to spend that money. It's just a foolhardy idea. I think the first place I saw it suggested was by an advocate who likes to borrow money.
Yeah.
Okay, he always likes to borrow money to pay for current debts. And as Brian said, we're on the threshold now. 25 years ago, it was a little bit easier to do because when it was 2002. And hey, is it really a big difference to us whether it's 2028 or 2038? No, not that big a deal. But when it's 2026 and we're looking at 2029 or 2030, we are right there. And that will totally change our budget going forward after that, our opportunity to do other things and invest for the first time in a long time, assuming, things stay reasonably stable. So I, for one, would be totally opposed to that. I don't think we should even look at it. I was going to comment on Councilor Cannon's comments, really. That's why I put my hand up. I think I understand his frustration, and I don't like 3.5% either. And I pretty much agree with everything he said, except for the fact I think you have to look at it in context as to where we are. And it's easy, I could easily do it, to sit here and say, I don't want to support it because I don't like to. But I'm not sure that helps. How did we get here? We shouldn't be here, in my opinion. But I think there's a lot of blame to go around as how we got here. I don't think the administration, frankly, has had the desire to make reductions the last few years because they didn't have the need to make reduction because there was, as I said before, there was more money in the system than ever before, which seemed very counterintuitive given COVID and everything else. But nor did the city council, though. So I think we share the same level of responsibility that I would assign to the administration, because we could have sat here and made motions, and there were no substantial, brave motions the last few years in the city council to reduce large amounts of money. And I frankly, for one, someone who did make some motions like that, 6 years or so ago, I think it was a combination of just the times. It is hard to make those types of motions when there is plenty of money. So we went from some of our own fault being in a situation that went from pretty good to pretty bad pretty fast. And I think that's what happened here. And that's the reason why I am willing to be a little bit more flexible than I might want to be. I also agree with your point, and I never thought of it before, about the idea of proposing 4.5 and 14 to get to
10% and 20 million.
3.5 and 10. I don't believe that happened either, but there's merit to that, though, that concern. So, I don't love it either, but I think we have to come to some level of compromise this year. But that's why I really do put the emphasis on next year, making sure we do it in a very practical, programmatic way if we're going to go anywhere above these numbers. I personally don't think it's going to be a better year next year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to be better. I think our free cash situation is going to be a lot worse, and I suspect our new growth will not be a lot better, and I can't imagine the state suddenly oozing money out of every pore for the whole year. So I think we'll have the opportunity next year. We can't miss that boat next year. I think it was a little late this year before we realized how bad this was. We may have had a general idea as to how bad it was, but by the time we really grasped how bad it was, I think it puts us in a situation where we have to try to compromise. And doing so does bother me, the fact what you state is 1,000% true. There are a lot of people, and I think more and more all the time from everything I see, more and more every week in this economy who are struggling, and they're raising this tax bill. And it's going to be more than 3.5% because the levy is going to be 3.5%, but we've seen the bills go up more than the levy for all the various reasons we've discussed. I feel really, really bad for those people. But at the same point, I feel like we can't completely destroy their government in one fell swoop, so we have to try to find that mid-range area, and that's the reason I support it. So I do appreciate your thoughts about that, but I think we all have some responsibility for where we are, and we have to figure a way out of it. So I guess the last thing I'd say, if you have an idea how to get it down to 2.5%, $8 million that you can propose, I would be very open to that, and I would seriously consider that.
Councilor Cannon.
Yeah, I mean, there are, thank you, and I agree with much of what you said, even in disagreeing with me. I think it's not ideal for the council to, and we had done it, years ago, and I think we kind of learned from that it's not an ideal practice because you end up forcing the hand of the folks that are running the organization when there may be a better way to accomplish the same thing. So if anything, we were probably a little more forgiving and a little more flexible than perhaps we should have been in retrospect. What is clear whenever I've talked to people that have governed at any level of government for many years, there is always a downturn coming. It's always somewhat unexpected. It's almost always cyclical, but you're never prepared for it. So those who have been around for a long time, and I would put you in that case, in that category, decades of experience, you have warned about, there is, and Councilor Stefanini as well. You've governed through really difficult times, and it's always difficult for people to imagine them happening when things were good. And you're right, during COVID, as you've talked about, when we were, I think, prepared for the worst financially, there was so much money that we seemed to blow through very quickly. Which is why I think that over the years, we had talked about doing the things that put us in a better shape. So we were right-sizing our government, making sure that we had a career path for the folks that work for the municipality so that they could continue to grow. When you consolidate responsibilities as folks retire or leave the community, they can often earn more and be on a career path that puts them in a good place. And you end up even further improving the quality of your municipal workforce, which is already spectacular. I don't like we can make proposals and stuff, but I think, and I'm happy to put, I'm sure we all have back of the envelope calculations on how we get there, and I think it can be done without impacting severely public-facing services. I'm hesitant to do that because there doesn't seem to be the appetite of the administration to do it. What you need, which we learned during the first administration, it's really important to have the buy-in of the administration to do this, because otherwise it's, we're going to prove to the city council that they went too far, and ultimately it's the residents that suffer because instead of cutting the thing that is not back of the house, some role that doesn't impact the public, it becomes, well, the first thing that we're going to do with this reduction in costs is make sure that it's a very public, front-facing, beloved part of the administrative function that gets impacted. It wouldn't be unique here, but it is what happens everywhere. So I think we've learned to be a little more thoughtful in making those kind of changes. But I don't think we're prepared. And the reason I'm a little hesitant to put lines in sand is because we got a new CFO. I feel good about where we're going. I feel good about long-term EDC. I think we're doing a lot of things well. I do not think we're prepared for next year. And I hope, everyone finds that we've got a lot more money than I think we will. But because we haven't done so many of the things that have been talked about, and somewhat of the lip service that I think we've been given about consolidation and efficiencies and go down the list, it's certainly hurting us now, but it's hurting us for the future. I'm really worried about little things, little microcosms of how closely are we watching certain expenses. We talked about vehicles earlier. I honestly thought that data would be, let's pull it and print it and send it along. We might not get to it until the fall, but the fact that we don't have at a moment's notice, and I'm sure this will change with the new CFO, that we don't have a sense of our fleet, the condition of our fleet and where everything is and all of the things that we've talked about at a moment's notice really makes me worry about the rest of the inventory and what are we not watching. When we talked about our real property and so many of the things that weren't mentioned that we had even asked about specifically, I really worry about what more we're going to find as the new CFO gets settled and starts peeling back further layers of the onion. So I would rather, instead of saying X, I'd rather, and get here, I'd almost rather us find ways to approve a lower budget, closer to 2.5, and then come back as we need, so you're stable, but come back as things progress, because I fear that we're going to find things that we're not prepared for, and this budget, what we talked about even informally tonight, kind of puts us at a maximum position. 3.5 and 10. It doesn't help us long-term with, the Moody's of the world and, nor just the cost of operating. I realize this is an ongoing discussion, so I'm not going to commit to any numbers and whatnot, but, and I know there's still work to do. But, I'm really worried about where we are, as I know everybody is. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Cannon. Council Stefanini.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair King covered, I think, most of the points I wanted, but there are a couple of, I'd like to put a couple of exclamation points on. The pension issue, which is not a bad fix for a community that Mr. King described, with 3 years left, think of it as you have 3 years left on a 30-year mortgage, and you're going to get another 30-year mortgage rather than pay off the next 3 years.
Starting all over again.
And paying off those 3 years gives us the ability to make access to that capital for other things and other needs. We need to stay the course. I agree, it's not worth the analysis. It makes a good talking point politically, but not a lot more. Second, I'd put an exclamation point on, not throwing out our entire government. As you look through this budget, with 80% of our costs more or less in personnel, the increases in these budgets are largely personnel increases. And they're things that are part of our change in schedule of payment for personnel. It's for collective bargaining agreements and the like to be more competitive, retention, et cetera. That said, it makes it more difficult to make the kind of cuts that we're looking at. So I don't think this is, a conspiracy. I think we entered into some collective bargaining agreements a few years ago, and the cost is coming up on that, which is why I think an executive session, if we can schedule it at our next meeting, before or after our meeting, because the school committee meets that night with their finance committee, I think would be helpful. And the last point is revenue. $5 billion, the Senate President sat here and told us, $5 billion of their $60 billion budget is in a Medicaid waiver with the Trump administration that expires in December of this year. Is there anybody that thinks that Trump is re-upping that? This isn't a complicated conversation. And our state government with $5 billion less in revenue, with the biggest draws being local aid and Chapter 70, it's hard for us to imagine that not only is their commitment to us going to be strained, but their ability to keep that commitment is going to be strained. And I think it's prudent for us to think about how we can go forward and look at it. And I would just add a nuance to that, to our CFO, which is, I realize we are trying to make adjustments, but to the extent that we're making adjustments in FTEs and personnel, one person this year, one teacher, one firefighter, one cop this year is 2 next year. So trimming a little bit on overtime is good. That makes us a little more efficient. But we really need to look at personnel, and we have an email on some of the superintendent's proposed cuts. For every teacher, educator, parent I've heard about relative to maintaining our schools, and I want to maintain our quality of our schools, we also have to deal with the fact that we have educator positions that don't have students that go with them. And so when I see someone who says we need to keep an ESL teacher where there is not an ESL class for that teacher, or where the class size has been cut in half, or teachers working 3/5 of a schedule, I'm sorry. It's not about the quality of the education. And if we have to deal with that this year to sustain next year and the year after, then let's have a honest conversation with ourselves that deals with that, rather than having a classroom of 10 kids and 10 kids when our standard is 22 kids. We've got to come to grips with that. And the same is true of managers and the way we're looking at it. We're in this, we've got to look at this long-term, which is why, Brian, my request, you're looking at the long-term piece of this. We need to have some snapshot, to Mr. King's point, about where are we going? So we have some sense of, what that cliff looks like. Because I think his assessment of revenues, free cash, probably are pretty close. I'm hoping that that's not true of new growth, because I think we've got some things that are in the works.
Absolutely. Mr. CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I just want to reiterate the point to the members of the subcommittee, my commitment to long-term planning, which I think was in the memo that I had submitted to the mayor for the budget. I think that it's a must. We need to start, as a matter of fact, I've brought most of the schedules that I created from my prior community in terms of the outline and the framework, so that the staff in my office can start populating some of that to begin that. But I think it's absolutely critical. I think was clear through the memo and clear in many of my discussions that I think we have to develop a plan to remove the 10 million in free cash, because the only way that we can build sustainability in the budget for the city, but predictability for its residents and for the council and where we're going and where we're heading, is through long-term planning. It also includes, and I've had this discussion with the mayor and the COO, it also looks at how we're financing capital, because the amount of debt that's being requested to finance capital will ultimately potentially hamper our ability to continue to provide the services when it's within Proposition 2.5. And I know that there is a charter component about the limitation on the amount of debt service. But all of these things, and health insurance is a big one. I have some ideas on how we might be able to make some adjustments that could be beneficial to the city, but they're not something that we can implement immediately. So those are a long-term review. So all this is very critical, and I've been, I think, clear to everybody that I've discussed on either side with the school administration, the mayor, members of the council, that I fully believe that we have to have a plan, and we need to start as soon as the ink is dry on this budget being approved, and start looking at those things and putting them together, and the four major tenets being the insurance, and collective bargaining agreements, and what the operational needs are going to be. And we need to look at revenue and see where those costs that are ingrained into the budget via collective bargaining agreements, personnel, debt service, the retirement payment, because I have the funding schedule automatic. I know what it will be for the next, the remainder of the term, unless the bottom falls out of the investment portion of their calculus. And see where those get us and what that number looks like in terms of what we have after we apply all of those costs through the levy and through potential increase in new growth and through local estimated receipts and what we think will happen with state aid. We have to, because as I've said more than once, we have to create sustainability in the budget going forward for operations, and we need to create predictability for the residents so that they understand what the operational costs are and how we're getting to where we're going and how we're managing the tax dollars that they very graciously provide on an annual basis. So I am fully committed to that and have already started internally the process to start developing that to begin that work.
Good to hear.
Mr. Blummer. You learned from your wife. She got notes tonight, I see.
Adam Blummer, District 2. I just said as I walked up, I'm going to bring my computer tonight, but I didn't prepare what I was going to say. And she's smiling back there. I just want to double check my understanding. There's no judgment to this question. The budget adjustments that you just made, that you just suggested, would result in a $3.2 million gap between what the school committee suggested and where you're at. Is that right? It was 2 originally, and this would be 1.2 more.
That's correct. It was a total of 4 million, but the first 2 with the original presentation, we suggested a total of 2 million this time, but with the application, which would be for 4 million, with the application of the additional Chapter 78, it would be the $3.2 million. That's correct.
Okay, so all right, that helps me. I didn't read it that way. So in other words, if we don't get the additional Chapter 78, then it would actually be a $4 million gap between that. Am I getting that correctly?
That's correct. We have had discussions with the administration on the school side, and they do understand that if we don't get the 760 that we are predicting, although I'm fairly confident since both the House and the Senate did provide the same numbers, the school administration does understand that any difference they would make up. So that has been the discussions.
Thank you, that's helpful. Just a couple of brief points. I always struggle with the fact that, like, where I work is a much more wealthy district, but they handle their finance timeline differently. On the school side and on the town side, we get a projection on September 30th of what we think the town is allocating to the schools the next year. And obviously it changes a little bit, but I knew on October 1st last year that the schools were budgeted to get, they were shooting for a 3% target. I think it ended up at 3.01. I don't really fully understand why we can't do that. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex here because we're so much more dependent on state aid. But when you're talking long-term processes, anything that gets clear is kind. That's not mine. That's a Brene Brown thing. But clear is kind. If the schools and every department knows in November what we're shooting for, they can plan a lot more thoughtfully and they can adjust. And I sure hope we get to that point. That was one of the reasons, to kind of talk to Mr. King's point, and we may have tinkered too much with the budget timeline. It's fair. We'll see whether it works or not. But there's two goals in the charter from this perspective. One was about starting the process earlier so that you get done earlier, because from a school side in particular, you're at a competitive disadvantage hiring on June 29th versus May 1st, and that matters to kids. But the other thing was to make sure that people had time to digest information publicly. You have an early budget meeting. Your first meeting, if you follow the charter, should be by January 1st. You could do it in December, or you can plan it, and I would hope it would be a guess at revenue and a guess at guidelines, so you can have those conversations then, so you're not having them on May 13th, and you're not reacting at the last minute. And there's a lot of reasons for this year. I mean, you have new staff, you have a lot of changes. I hope it gets better as it goes along. But I will lastly say, I hear you, Mr. Stefanini, on the point of it's not fiscally sound to have positions in any department that aren't needed. I would, without knowing the Framingham school budget any more than I know because I have a family member who works there, I significantly doubt there's $3.2 million of easy-to-cut positions. And there's going to be a lot of pain to be had on that side. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blummer. Council Stefanini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree, Mr. Blummer, with your comments. I don't expect that any of these cuts are coming without pain. I guess I'm trying to, while working through the numbers and the programs to figure out what we need and where we are, it's harder to do that when responsible voices in our community are suggesting that any cut to education is a cut to, our children or whatever else. And I have an email tonight from a former chair of the school committee, former chair of the finance committee, suggesting that at schools and positions I know that are vacant that are not vacant, but that are without kids at the moment, that we should maintain those. And so all I'm suggesting is we need to have a little bit of honesty here. So if we can't afford and deal with $3 million, I'm prepared to deal with that and deal with the pain of what it means to bring that revenue up. But I also am not prepared to fund it at a higher level that is unsustainable just because somebody doesn't like the perception or the politics of, a position. We've got to make some tough decisions, and they have to be based on facts and on kids, and police and fire and everything else, which is why I think the CFO, one of the most important things is identifying the risks and the choices. And if the mayor comes back and says, we can do this, but we have to eliminate this program, we have to come to grips with the cost and the revenue. Same with the schools. And I know that's not true of every member of the school committee. But I think when for those of us who are active and engaged and who study what's going on, our opinions often carry more weight because people who aren't as active and engaged look at it and say, that Blummer guy, he pays attention, so he must have something to say that I should listen to. and I'm not picking on you, Adam, I mean, it's all of us. So we have a heightened responsibility to deal with real facts, and I find it very difficult on this particular point, because I know it's somewhere between where we are today in the schools and that million. I don't disagree with you that we're going to get pain. I think part of what I'd like to know is what is the pain? So we can start to figure out and make real choices. I don't honestly today know that I can tell you what that choice is today. Because I don't feel like the school committee has voted yep, here's the number you want, Mr. Mayor, but here's the number that we think is necessary for this, because the number I think is artificially high. I'm sorry if I went on that, but I wanted to respond to a piece of that.
Thank you, Council Stephanie. Anybody, Council Mallett?
Thank you. I want to address the timeline for a minute, because we have not even referred the budget to the Finance Subcommittee. So if we're not, so realistically, it sounds like that's not going to happen for next week's council meeting, right? So we're not going to get the budget referred to us until May 26th. I don't even know if we have a meeting on May 26th. We do? We do. Not finance sub. It needs to, the budget needs to come to us from the council, right? So there needs to be a council meeting. Per charter, it needs to be referred to us from the council.
Well, our rules do allow for a direct referral, but we could resolve that in several different ways. We could do a direct referral like we do a lot. We could do a quick Zoom meeting to refer it. We could do any of those things.
So, okay, so that's step one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm thinking about, layoffs, if they happen, which feels like it's a good possibility. I mean, giving people 2 weeks' notice, that puts us second week of June already, right? I just, I'm curious to hear from other folks, like, we don't have 28 days in the Finance Subcommittee and then 21 days in council before the end of the fiscal year anymore, right? Like, we don't have that time. So, both for residents, but also for me, I'm sort of curious to hear from folks where you imagine the time of the budget discussion is going to be spent. Is it here in finance? Is it in the full council? And just looking at the meeting dates, like how folks sort of imagine that's going to happen. And can be to the mayor, can be to other folks on council.
You want me to take a shot at that?
Maybe yes.
I think based on the conversation we're having, we're looking at a finance subcommittee on May 20th, which is a Wednesday, with either emergency council meeting on the 26th or a referral directly after the budget is submitted from the chair, which our rules allow, directly to the finance committee, in which case I would think we would be meeting on the 21st or the 26th and 28th. We front-end loaded our meeting schedule this year, intentionally so, with meetings with every single department. And we did so in anticipation that we would be able to do that, so that we would have a sense of where those departments were, so that all 5 of us would be up to speed and be ready to go forward. I think we have some work to do with the schools, but I think that once the budget comes here, I think it's for the chair of this subcommittee to then go through and figure out a schedule. We've talked about that loosely, but I think we have to figure that out. And I don't know that we need all the time that is in the budget. I'm sensitive to layoffs, especially in schools. I think that universe of people has to be determined by the school committee based on where they are, based on the maximum level of cut. And I would say to you, in a normal year in Framingham, the number is known in September, October of the previous year to the departments. It starts to get there. It is harder when you have an unusual year where the revenues are, and that's where our failure to do long-range planning really has hurt us. Because, truth be known, we look at this budget is a reflection of personnel costs across the city. And we didn't anticipate that, and we were anticipating revenues to continue along the positive reflection they had been for a few cycles, so that our revenue, our personnel costs could track with them, and they haven't, because we're seeing a decline in revenues. So the calendar, I think that's realistic. I mean, I have a question for Mr. King. Are you comfortable with the rules and referring it without a meeting? I mean, I am, as chair of the Rules Committee.
Yes, I am. And I think even if there was some feeling that we had a technical, that we had to do it before we even rejected it. So we can vote here to reject it and reject it formally the next Tuesday night and start over again, too, if we want to.
Yep.
Councilor
But
Malik.
how would that help us in terms of,
It just starts the timeline again. We're going to have to, I just can't get too, I mean, we all know when the fiscal year ends, and we all know what the considerations are. But, I mean, it's a very unique, problematical year, like we said. And I trust that the administration will work with us and not try to pull any fast ones based on the schedule. And I'm willing to trust that. And I'm trusting that Mr. Aviani will have this committee situated that we, as we get the details, that we can do it in a way that is efficient but full. And we're going to make it. It's not ideal. I mean, it's not ideal. And the irony is maybe I am becoming a little bit more of a fan of the slightly earlier process than I previously was. I think September is a little early, but I also agree that I worked in the school district too, where by September, October, we pretty much were looking at what our targets were for the following year. I think the problem with doing that here, I'm getting off subject, but I think there's some challenges with doing that here. But so I'm not really nervous about the schedule. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm not nervous.
are you imagining that, through you, Chair, Councilor King, are you imagining a final vote on the budget to be done on June 30th?
No.
You think it'll be on June 23rd, the week before?
I hope the 16th and the 23rd, yeah.
16th and the 23rd might be our two votes?
I would hope.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Maroney. Welcome.
Chris Maroney, thank you. The president of the Framingham Teachers Association, there are some contractual obligations as far as the timeline goes, to your point. Non-renewals have to come by June 15th. So that means any educator who is being under 3 years who is being non-renewed has to be notified by June 15th if they're being non-renewed. Some of that has already happened, but obviously, depending on the budget, it would be more significant. So those staff members would need to know by June 15th, as well as transfers. If staff members are being transferred, they have to be notified by June 1st. So that's just another timeline issue to resolve.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Anybody else on the council? Anybody else in the room?
I move we adjourn.
Let me just check Zoom real quick. Yep, okay. Motion to adjourn by Councilor King, a second by Councilor Cannon. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hands. Aye, voted 5-0. And again, I just want to apologize for being late.
Don't let it happen again.
I won't.